Lots of video games have food systems, a design decision usually tied to an inventory. The combination of these mechanics intended to add an extra challenge to the overall gameplay experience. Minecraft, as of beta 1.8, got an update to how food worked, changing the original food for health system by adding in a new mechanic, the hunger bar. This bar would slowly go down over time when the player was doing strenuous tasks, which meant the player would have to keep eating food to keep the bar full, which in turn regenerated their health. This was a big change, not just because it came in one of the most polarizing updates the game had received up to that point, but because it shifted one of the game's primary challenges and altered the overall experience. Today I'm going to be critiquing the Minecraft hunger bar by looking at how it negatively impacted the game's difficulty. I'm also going to be comparing the hunger bar to similar mechanics found in Minecraft's contemporaries to see where the idea could be improved upon. Starting off, here's an example of how Minecraft's inventory worked in beta 1.7.3. Your inventory can hold lots of different things. Across the 36 total slots, you can have blocks, tools, materials, or utility items. However, all of the food items, excluding cookies, each take up one of those 36 slots just on their own. As a result of this design decision to make food not stack, an incredibly nuanced challenge is being placed in front of the player. Food worked in a very situational way back in beta. If the player got hit and took some damage, the only way to get those hearts back would be to die, or eat some food. I paused for dramatic effect, I hope that's appreciated. This meant that players had to sacrifice one slot of their limited inventory, which at any point could already be full of dozens of other items, for one potential heal. That value changes depending on what food they have. This, as a result, makes the game incredibly engaging, because the player is being asked to balance how much space they have, how much space they don't, and if it's worth using one of their potential healing items to get back some health. Beyond that, this challenge changed as the player progressed, how early or late they were into the game, and if they were using mods, creating a dynamic problem that could be overcome in very different ways. With that context, here's what your inventory looked like in beta 1.8, the version that added in hunger. Everything looks alright initially, but in addition to the player needing to eat, food now stacks, clearing up a lot of inventory space. Not only does this reduce the risk-reward challenge of the prior version, it makes the overall survival experience way easier. The player can now heal themselves to full dozens of times over with just one stack of pork chops, and said stack would now only take up one slot of their inventory. Now, the health gained wasn't instant like in the prior version. After numerous updates over the last 9 years, the final count as of 1.18 was half a heart every 4 seconds, when the bar is near full. But at the cost of implementing a function that just keeps Minecraft in line with other survival games, and providing more freedom to the player with how they structure their inventory, one of the game's major challenge thresholds has been basically removed. Which is a real shame. Minecraft confining itself with a hunger bar is the only thread connecting it to the survival genre as a whole, loosely tying it to games that take the mechanic way further than Mojang ever could. The Forest, for example, has hunger and thirst as primary stats to manage, but on top of that, has a whole sanity system that places the player in a position where if they're eating food that they really shouldn't, they'll suffer from psychological distress and won't be able to tell what is and isn't real around them. Meaning they really need to plan ahead with what they eat, lest they turn to snacking on something a little more, yeah, you shouldn't be eating that. By contrast, Subnautica has far more lenient stats to manage, with food and water having several different ways to be handled, each with their own benefits and drawbacks. Subnautica is also mostly based around exploration that still keeps focus on its survival elements, not pushing them to the side for the sake of its moment-to-moment experiences. Based on these two, honestly pretty arbitrary examples I picked, Minecraft isn't going all the way in either direction. Mojang isn't striving to make drastic changes to keep the game aligned with more realistic games in the genre. But they also aren't adding to the mechanic to make hunger a more engaging problem for players to deal with. As a result of not going all the way in either direction, the hunger bar feels secondary. It's a statistic, a number that only serves as a mild annoyance, not offering any engaging challenge or risk to the player, which really stings. Because it came at the cost of a system that was so great, that had so much nuance, it could have become so much more complex as the game received updates. I look at some games now and see what they've done, how they've used similar mechanics in interesting ways I wish modern Minecraft would carry on. Games like Cube World or The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild show that there are plenty of interesting ways to correlate food with health, ways that are very similar to the beta version of Minecraft we've discussed already. Hunger, as a mechanic correlated with game design, is supposed to be a challenge that the player is forced to deal with, to manage and overcome for the sake of their own survival. I just wish Minecraft either went all in on survival or shifted back to a time when things were simpler, an outcome that I personally wouldn't have any problems with.